What's up, duders? Okay, we're on to our second, it's technically the third video, but the second topic for my long form content. I really don't know what this is. I don't even have a name for what we're gonna call these videos. So if you've got an idea, put a comment below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, you know, all that YouTube crap, or they won't show my video to anyone, and I think I'm shadow banned, so go do all that stuff. Okay, so today's topic, what are we going to talk about? Today is real world, in history, Regiments of Renown. So if you come to my stream, you know that I really like Total War Warhammer 3 is the one I'm playing, but I've been playing since part 1. Now, Total War is a, strategy game. It's a turn-based strategy game, but, when you get into a battle, it's actually like a tactical game where you control units against enemy units, and you try to outflank them, and you do maneuvers, and it's great, and it's awesome, especially in the Total War realm, but they also have historical ones, And so in the game, you could have units of spearmen, swordsmen, archers, whatever, artillery, all that stuff. But there's a concept of Regiment of Renown. A Regiment of Renown, you can only get a unique unit per whatever race or army you're playing, a unique unit, and they usually have special powers. So you can get a unique elven archer Regiment of Renown, and maybe they have fire arrow capability, or you can get a unique cavalry, and maybe they do magical damage. It's really cool, and you can get one, and they're usually expensive, but they're amazing. And they all have special powers, right? But the whole concept is when you click on this Regiment of Renown, the Dragon Slayers of whatever mountain, I don't know, they will actually be based off real Total War history in the books. So if you follow the lore, this is a regiment that, is known by the whole world of their bravery or their achievements or whatever. Well, that exists in history, right? And so one of the stupid things I was thinking about, because I think about dumb, weird stuff while everyone's living their normal life, was, I want to talk about actual Regiments of Renown in history. They existed, right? So did a bit of research and came up with this list. So we're going to get started. All right, guys, starting off strong with number 1, the Naschtexen, or the Night Witches. The Naschtexen was a derogatory German term that translates to the Night Witches. That was a nickname given to the all-female Soviet military unit of aviators of the 588th Night Bomber Regiment. This regiment was started by Major Marina Raskova, who convinced Joseph Stalin by letter to form female combat units, not for equality, but for practicality, due to the dire need of combatants during World War II to fight the German offensive for the Soviet Union. 3 female Air Force units were formed in late 1941. There was a fighter group, so there were female fighters. Female bomber group, which we're talking about today, the 588th, the Night Witches, and the dive bombers. So the 588th, the Night Witches, were tasked with performing nighttime harassment and precision bombing against the German military from 1942 to 1945 in the Crimean, Belarus, Poland, and German offenses. These pilots flew the, man, I'm going to butcher this. They flew the Polykarpov PO2 Kukuruznik, which translates to mule. This is an old aircraft. I think it was designed in 1926, took its first flight in 1927, and it entered manufacturing in 1928. And it was by the Polykarpov Design Bureau. I know I'm saying that wrong. Anyway, it crewed 1 pilot and 1 navigator. And the Night Witches, the actual pilots in that unit, called this a coffin with wings. That's what they called it, because it was actually made of plywood and it just had canvas stretched over it. So the reason they called it a coffin, 1 tracer bullet could burst the whole aircraft into flames. However, 1 Night Witch actually lucked out, and she landed with 42 bullet holes and did not catch the aircraft on fire. So she got lucky, and apparently she jumped into another plane and went back on another sortie. So the plane's top speed was 90 miles per hour and could only carry 2 bombs. So between carrying 2 bombs, 2 female aircrew, that made the plane so heavy that it had to fly low altitude. Well, because of that, they could be taken out with small arms fire. So flying during the day wasn't going to work. So this resulted into them having to fly night sorties using the cover of darkness to protect them, because they were completely defenseless. And because of that weight, also, one thing I didn't mention is that they couldn't wear parachutes. Every single pound counted for them to be able to fly. And they were so close to the ground anyway in how they flew, it wouldn't have even worked. They would have jumped out and hit the ground before the parachute deployed. So they didn't carry parachutes. They got shot down. They were in trouble. Because of the top speed of 90 miles per hour, though, there were advantages. So there were cases where the German fighter planes like night fighters would pretty much try to catch up with them and shoot them down. But because of their slow speed and their maneuverability, because it was a plywood aircraft, they could actually do sharp turns pretty quickly and just pretty much shake any enemy on their six. And that happened on a few occasions. Also, due to the wooden frame, the planes didn't show up on radar or infrared indicators by ground anti-air units. And so they were able, like with the cover of darkness, they could sneak into enemy bases and pretty much just bomb the shit out of them. So the Night Witches also were able to land or take off from any location. So like, let's say they entered a enemy area of attack, drop some bombs. Like if they were getting shot at, they could pretty much land anywhere outside the base and evade if they needed to. They would also so the strategy was for the Night Witches to attack at night. So there would be, air or ground attacks during the day between the Soviets and the Germans. And then when the Germans tried to sleep at night, they would keep them up all night with just bomb raids until the sun came up. That's where the Night Witches came in. So even though they could only carry 2 bombs and not really rack up a lot of kills, it would make it so the German troops for 3 freaking years just could not get sleep. They would just have to worry about bomb raids. And apparently their bomb capabilities were pretty accurate. But the problem was the pilots of the Night Witches didn't get sleep either, because they would have to train during the day, do their normal duties, and then fight at night. Like, like for me, I just think about, Shania Twain's "Let's Go Girls." It's like everyone goes to sleep. It's like, all right, brooms up, let's go. But there was a really cool tactic that I was reading about that I really liked. So the way the Night Witches actually snuck into the bases, because after the night attacks started and they would do night bombings, the Germans retaliated pretty quickly. They started using searchlights to look for them because they knew every single night they're coming. Every single night. So they started using searchlights to check, in a circular pattern, check their base. And they would also use flat cannons to try to shoot them down because they were so close to the ground, like they could take them out pretty easily. So a tactic to avoid this is the Night Witches would fly in a 3 formation, and the flanking Night Witches in formation would take off to the left and to the right, and they would fly in circles until the lights would catch them. Once the lights would catch them, the pilot in the middle, actually, as soon as this started, would shut off her engine so you couldn't hear the engine. She would glide into the base. And then when she would find her target, she would drop her bombs, take them out, then fly back, regroup, but would switch spots with the other Night Witches, regroup, and then one of them that was flying in the circles would go attack. And dude, I would like totally take advantage of this. I would have played into it. Like if I were them, I would have told my wing women like, yo, you should cackle like a witch, I would have them go, brooms up, bitches, and then get in there and drop bombs. Like I would have totally, I would have played it up for sure. Okay, so what was the result? So with the Night Witches, they flew 23,672 combat sorties, that's combat missions, 28,676 flight hours, 3,000 tons of bombs, and 26,000 incendiary shells. They destroyed 17 bridges, 9 railways, 2 railway stations, 26 warehouses, 12 fuel depots, 176 armored vehicles, 86 targeted infantry locations, and 11 searchlights. And not only did they play DPS, they also played support. They performed 155 supply drops of food and ammunition to ground troops. 261 women served in the regiment. 32 of them died during that 3-year period. Each pilot flew an average of 800 sorties, and one pilot, Irina Sabrova, flew 1,008 sorties, more than any other member in the regiment. So that means however many sorties the number 2 person in the regiment flew, she flew 1,008 more combat missions than they did. So she got a lot of awards for that. Doing research on this Regiment of Renown was awesome. On to number 2. All right, guys, Regiment of Renown number 2, Gustavus Adolphus's Mobile Artillery Crew of Sweden. Gustavus Adolphus is known as Sweden's Gunpowder King. He's also known as the Lion of the North, the Golden King, and the Great. He is the founder of the Swedish Empire. So he's known in the 1600s for entering the 30 Years' War between the Protestant rulers and the Catholic Church and kingdoms, and some say shaping modern military history with his use of artillery and gunpowder usage with muskets. So at the time, Sweden had plenty of iron and bronze that was used to make cannons, and he had gunpowder technology, but the problem is he didn't have skilled laborers to make cannons using iron and bronze for siege operations. Besides, he had a military, kind of like thought or trend or, strategy for mobilization. He believed in quick mobility. So the problem with artillery at the time, it was big and clunky. Like, you had 24-pound cannons that could dish out damage, but it was very hard to move. And you'd have to operate, like, you would need 12 soldiers just to operate that one cannon. And who knows how many horses, right? And so he liked the idea of mobility. So with gunpowder, which was a new technology that they adopted, how can you use it quickly? How can you flank with it? And so he noticed that in European history, that early gunpowder had a lot of issues. There was friendly fire, cannons and musket fire would take out frontline troops. Orchestration was hard. Like, as soon as the battle started, artillery barrages would cease, or you would kill your own people. Bad positioning. If you didn't have high ground, how are you going to use artillery? You sometimes didn't. And it was logistical nightmares. If it started raining, good luck. You're not getting that cannon to fight. We see this a lot of time in military history. So also in the European time, poor iron caused inaccuracy, and the cannon could explode and take out the whole crew. And that happened every now and then. So one of the major issues he was thinking about is, well, how do you take spear units, musket units, and crossbows and artillery, and how do you kind of mix it all together? So his strategy was to form cross-functional units, for you agile fuckers out there, cross-functional units that would be under the same commander. So you could use spears for melee attacks, and in case cavalry was coming, you could use muskets and crossbows to provide volley fire, for anyone who's shielded. And then you had mobile artillery, but he wanted to use mobile artillery not necessarily for sieging, but anti-personnel. So he would avoid static artillery that could be retaliated, use artillery that could move with less logistical effort. So you could literally just have two dudes like running with this cannon if they need to, or you could have a horse treat that cannon as almost like cavalry. Like, you could flank the sides, dudes get off the horse and fucking start firing, right? And provide artillery support to any unit that needs it right away, because you're with the unit. The unit needs it, it can be used. The problem is, okay, fine. If this is close quarters combat, how do you take out, infantry or cavalry that's hitting you? Well, they actually developed canister, like anti-personnel canister fire that would pretty much shred infantry or even cavalry. It would be filled with musket balls, nails, shrapnel, sharp metal. And then also you would be able to load up multiple musket balls and use grape shot. So it was almost like post-medieval shotgun, like field artillery shotgun shells that would shred whole units of people. It was almost like psychological warfare. And so this would make it, if you took these mobile crews and you wanted to actually flank on the outer edges and surround your enemy and start firing on them, if a cavalry unit came to charge you and you have 3 to 6 cannons for your infantry group, which they had based on the orders he gave, you have 6 freaking shotguns just unloading on whoever's flanking you. And there were historical reports of infantry and cavalry charges being completely thwarted by a single unit of these artillery crews. So artillery was best used in the Battle of Breitenfeld, which is one of Gustavus's most famous battles. In this battle, his cannons fired 3 times faster than the Catholic Army's artillery, and it could fire twice as fast as a musket fire. So loading a musket took longer than loading these cannons. The Swedish artillery regiment won the initial barrage, where it was cannon versus cannon in Breitenfeld, and the Catholic Army's 24-pound cannons were dealing serious damage, but they took too long to load and they were static. So these smaller cannons, these 3 and 4 pounder cannons on the ground, were zipping around the battlefield, zigzagging and taking out tertio squares. These were large musket squares that would be protected by spearmen, and they would just aim for these squares and just start unloading on them. Some analysis that's done by U.S. Army military strategist Brian D. Moore says his regiments were merged into brigades online, linear tactics, and integrated with cavalry and artillery combined arms. to form self-sustaining combat groups, which could also provide mutual support when acting in concert. The cavalry could be used to overrun the enemy infantry and artillery, shock action, or neutralize the opposing cavalry. The artillery would suppress the enemy supporting arms, gain fire superiority, while the infantry would advance firing by salvo, fire and maneuver, until near enough to push for the pike. So, as you can see, like, this was one of the very first cases, and there is some use in the Ottoman Empire, but this is one of the first cases where you have like a cavalry artillery. That's just crazy. I mean, nowadays, you know, you have APC units that fire these explosive rounds, but back then you had 2 horses and a dream, baby. Okay, on to number 3. All right, y'all, on to number 3. This video is getting kind of long, so we got to do this quick. All right, so the Ghost of Suommussalmi. This one I'm really excited about. So this regiment, JR-27, it's a Finnish regiment that defended against a Soviet advancement to their headquarters in Oulu, where the Soviets were trying to cut Finland in half and kind of split them up. So these were Finnish ski troops that defended against the Soviet Union. It was a regiment that they actually would go on skis and they'd freaking light people up, man, like Blades of Glory style, you know, Chaz just, nah, but he's on skates, but these are skis. So they would use snow camouflage, and they had equipment that would allow them to survive below freezing temperature, and they could take off that equipment and have these real light snowsuits so they could zip on by. When they would zip on by on the Soviets, they would surround the Soviets, fire mortar fire like mobile artillery, kind of like in the last list, and they would hit troops, and then they would do drive-by shootings on skis with submachine guns. They would do it on skis. They would do it on like tanks or all personal carrier vehicles, armored vehicles on skis. And they would even get pulled by reindeer. No shit. Also, you know, they would attack at night during a winter storm in order to do as much damage as possible and protect themselves. So they would actually go into enemy camps and they would detread the tanks using like tools, and they would throw like hand grenades in tents while soldiers were sleeping, and then they would also go in and destroy the Soviets' kitchen outposts. So they would have kitchens where they would make warm food. Nah, man, they would just destroy them. They also had heavy machine gun entrenchments, so if the Soviets tried to run because they were surrounded in what was called a mati encirclement. So a mati means bundle of sticks. So imagine you created bundle of sticks to create a circle. They'd be real thin, and there would be thin defense, but it would be complete surrounding. But like if the Soviets would either try to attack them or run, boom, they would get hit by these heavy machine gun volleys. So yeah, the Soviet Union tried to cut these guys in half, and they actually succeeded in beating the Finnish Independent Battalion. Not fully beating them, but like they lost more than half their troops. Even some of their officers took their own life because of how many troops they lost. But that gave enough time for the JR-27 Mobile Infantry Ghosts, the ski infantry, to surround the Soviet Union, take out a lot of them. And no kidding, like they would ski in circles and then drop a lot of bodies. The Finnish even said they were surprised at how many Soviets would die. Like it was just target-rich environment. They would even attack with a small group just so they could stick and run. In many cases, the mortars, they were on skis. They would come by, drop bombs, and leave. The submachine gun thing would happen that I talked about. But also, there were ski snipers. They would just ski to the point where they'd see an officer, pop them on a headshot, and keep going. And they would just take out officers. And so, yeah, I mean, the Soviet military was so distraught with their losses that in one case, one of the units actually committed mutiny and killed their own officer and ran. In a lot of cases, the Finnish actually allowed the Soviets to run because they felt bad for them. The Finnish forces in just 3 weeks captured 43 tanks, 70 field guns, 278 trucks, 1,170 horses, 29 anti-tank guns, 300 machine guns, 6,000 rifles, and it is estimated that 27,000 Soviets were killed in action, 2,100 were captured, and many of them suffered from life-altering frostbite. The Russian history actually shows that only half of those were killed, so that's debated. So pretty much what the Ghosts would do is they lean towards simplified plans. They would do frontal assaults or they would do circular assaults, but they would attack at night and during winter storms. The heavier the storm, the better. Anything that was complicated, they just wouldn't execute. Like I said, they would attack larger groups with smaller groups, so it was difficult to kill them. And a lot of times, by the time they were done with their assault, when the Soviets would pretty much go in prone and get their rifles ready, the Finnish Ghosts were already gone. they would flood the water on all roads in the area in Suommussalmi so that they'd be ice roads. So if armored vehicles were trying to either do an assault or make a break for it, they would have to dismount all of their troops, and then they would get mowed by machine gun fire. 2 machine gun soldiers that were next to each other, they claimed that they actually expended 40,000 bullets in a single volley, well, a single set of volleys, killed so many troops that many of the Soviet Union riflemen actually used frozen dead bodies as kind of a bunker so they could return fire. And a lot of times these machine gunners would just fire till they were out of ammo, and they'd have to go back to base to get more. Even when the Soviets would take a village, the Ghosts would just set the village on fire. The only benefit out of this for the Soviets, the only good thing they can get out of it, is at least it was warm while the village was on fire. So yeah, I thought this was a really cool group. I wanted to cover it really fast, so I hope you enjoyed it. On to the outro. All right, guys. Yeah, it took me a couple days to do this. It was a lot of work to do this research. Tell me what you think. I need feedback. Do you like it more documentary style where I go like into the stats? Or do you guys want something like quick, like 1 through 10? Maybe I talk about each for like a minute. I don't go into the stats too much because I feel like I can give more of a discussion, and because I'm reading notes, guys. I'm looking at notes. I'm trying to jog my memory. If you want, I can kind of just like, because I use PowerPoint, right? So I could kind of do a list of 10 things. I just tell you what I know. I kind of give you more of my banter that I do on stream. Would you guys rather see that, or would you rather see kind of what this video was in the last 2 videos about the Catholic relics that were so deep into it, it could be a damn near hour-long documentary? Tell me what you think. Part 2 is going to come out. It's going to be the same style, unless I get like overwhelming feedback. But yeah, tell me what you guys think, and yeah, see you at the next video.